Welcome, everyone, to Ignite CDA's April board meeting. If you'd all stand and help me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you. It's time for public comment. Any public comment, please come forward. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Motion to approve the consent calendar?
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? And I think we have Sarah and Steve on a voice call. And Brennan? I don't see Brennan up there, but.
I see a phone. You might want to just have them respond to you, Mr. Chairman, make sure they can hear us.
Okay, we're going to, all in favor, say aye.
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 I don't hear any ayes from the phone call.
You gotta unmute him.
Well, there's a majority here.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thanks.
Can they hear us?
Hopefully they can hear us okay.
Because we're not hearing Sarah, Steve, or Brennan.
It looked like they were talking because they went green. Yeah, Brennan, I think, is talking. Brennan.
Well, I think we're having some communication problems, Jeff.
Yeah, I can't seem to find them.
They can hit their speaker button 3 times for a yes and 2 times for a no, or?
So they're lost in cyberspace right now.
We'll just move on then and let Jeff work on that. But the Executive Director's Report, Tony, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Several items underneath my report today. The first one is the updated Ignite CDA public records policy. I shared that policy with you, and basically it's just modifying some policy language to correspond to updated Idaho code sections and designating an agency representative, which is me, to be the custodian of public records and the main contact for public records requests. So hopefully if you have any questions on that, Danielle or I can address them, but it was pretty simple edits and updates to that policy.
Does that need a motion?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
I'll make a motion then to update the Ignite CDA public records policy.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Second item on my report, Mr. Chairman, is just amendment number 1 to the Active West LLC Area 6 DDA phasing plan. I shared a summary of this with you. Basically, I'll kind of give the background to the viewing audience and our attendees here at the meeting. So under the Area 6 DDA, construction of homes was required to be completed via phasing plan. So the phasing plan as submitted was to commence within 90 days after closing for Phase 1, which shall include the construction of 12 duplex units. And Phase 2 was to commence within 360 days of closing and shall include the construction of up to 12 townhome units. In all cases, construction of all homes in each phase shall be completed within 480 days after the initiation of each phase. So based on the closing date of the transfer of the property of April 13th, 2021, commencement and completion and construction of each phase under the phasing plan should be or have been completed on the following dates. So Phase 1, the 12 duplexes, should have started July 12th, 2021 and be completed November 14th, 2022, so last year. Phase 2, the 12 townhomes, should start April 8th, 2022 and be completed August 1st of this year. Active West submitted a proposal to come back into compliance with the original phasing plan. That proposal contains an amended phasing plan for Area 6, which effectively extends the commencement date for Phase 2 and completion dates for both phases. The final completion date of construction on homes under the proposed phasing plan is March 31st, 2023 for Phase 1, which we think is complete by now, and June 30th, 2024 for Phase 2. So they're pushing out the completion of Phase 2 till 2024. So based on the proposed extension to the phasing plan, Ignite would experience a financial injury estimated about $38,000 based on projected tax increment revenue that would have been captured if construction proceeded according to the original phasing plan. So here's Ignite's proposal. This extension will be granted by Ignite at no additional cost if construction is commenced and completed in accordance with this revised phasing plan. However, the proposal still represents a loss in projected tax increment revenue to Ignite of $38,000. Thus, assuming phase 1 is already complete, if construction of all homes in phase 2 is not completed by the final date of June 30th, 2024, then an extension fee in that same amount of $38,333 would be immediately due and payable to Ignite. We shared this with the Active West development team, and they agreed to this proposal and are okay with it. And so we ran this by the Atlas Project RFP Review Committee, and they also recommended approval of this revised Amendment 1 to the phasing plan to the DDA. So we bring that forward for your consideration tonight.
Questions? Comments?
Active West has seen this already,
Oh, yes.
and what was their thoughts?
Somebody.
What type of comments did they make?
They just, they responded to us. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
They responded to us and said that they've just had very similar issues that other development teams have had, supply chain issues, workforce, labor issues, cost of materials and stuff like that, and they've just been delayed, and they understand they're behind, but they have rationalized it, and they thought they had leeway within the DDA. And just like we did with the other development team for areas 5B and 8, which we also had a very similar letter like this, they have a penalty pending if they do not make their revised phasing plan. So we followed that same protocol with this development team to be fair and to be consistent. And this is a much quicker turnaround for his phase 2, which he's already pouring foundations on this week. So it looks like he probably won't have much of a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Assuming that Danielle is A-okay with this?
Yes, I am, Chairman.
Thanks. All righty. All in favor?
Aye.
I didn't catch the motion.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'll make a motion then to
Already did.
submit the Active West LLC Area 6 DDA Amendment 1 phasing plan.
Second.
Moved and
If
seconded.
I could add to that motion that you authorize us to enter into a DDA amendment to reflect the same.
Yes.
The second, yes.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. We still can't hear Sarah, Brennan, or Steve, so motion carries.
I think they have some.
Next under my report, Mr. Chairman, is the Riverfest LLC Areas 5B and 8 DDA Amendment Number 2, which involves Area 5B architecture. So what's happening with the 5B area is that, and Phil Boyd will help me here in a second showing you some graphics, but they submitted a product type that the board agreed to when we approved the DDA. And over the course of the past several months, they've kind of changed their thinking on what they'd like to do there. And the changing concept, we can call it a tilt or a pivot, whatever term is the appropriate way, is drastically different than what they submitted and you guys approved. So through the ADRC, the Architecture Design Review Committee, which is comprised of Phil Boyd and Hillary and Dale Hatch, they've worked with the team and they worked with our committee to kind of bring their revised concept to fruition, so to speak. So we ran this by the committee, the review committee, and they recommended that we bring it forward to the board with a due pass recommendation for this Amendment 2 to the DDA. So with that said, I'll ask Phil to come up and he can kind of run you through the graphics of what we're talking about. Thanks, Phil.
Chairman Hoskin and board members. Thank you, Jeff. So just to refresh everybody's memory, 5B, this location here, this was the product that was originally presented in the RFP. And at the time, we struggled, the ADRC committee struggled, and the selection committee struggled a little bit with the architecture of it because it was very gray and dark. So we actually went down the path with the Butler team. At this point in their process, they had a designers, which is different from an architect. And so they were using a designer. We went through a number of iterations. They still weren't meeting the architectural standards, and at some point in there, John Butler decided to retain Architects West. So Architects West started on the project, and on their first submittal, they produced this. So we were, I'm trying to think of the diplomatic, anyway, we did not, this didn't meet the standards.
Bank of America?
Yeah, something. And so it looked very commercial and whatnot. And so we created a sit-down with the Butlers and their architectural team and asked them to kind of go through and revise this. And we gave them a number of suggestions and pointed out to them, and one of the things architectural standards says is you have to consider the neighborhood, what's surrounding you. And so this is, Tony was just mentioning Area 6, this is the product Dennis Cunningham is producing there. And we went through a few iterations, not on this product, the twin homes here, but on this product, we went through a few iterations with Dennis's team, who was responsive and produced that final product there. This is the SMOC team up on 14 and 15. This has been the least iterative group. And when we had met with the SMOC team ahead of time, we kind of said, here's all the things we've been challenged with from an architectural review standpoint. Please take them into consideration and think about these things when you guys put your architecture together. And there were just very few edits on what the SMOC team produced. But this is kind of kitty corner from, I'll go back to the map. It's up in here. So here's 5B. You could argue whether it's in close proximity, but it's still part of the neighborhood. So 6 is down here. 14 and 15 are up here. And Architects West came back, not in an aggressive way, but essentially they were pulling excerpts out of the architectural standards and promoting how this product did meet the architectural guidelines. And I won't belabor the details what they went through. Hillary Patterson and Del Hatch do a great job because they both are more adept at this than I am. And so we made several suggestions to them, and Architects West came back and said, what if we give you the entire neighborhood, what the entire neighborhood will look like? We'll take all your comments into consideration and redo the neighborhood, which they did. And so this is a rendering looking north, essentially if you were standing in the park and looking north. And you can see the homes are on the front are similar to what was initially shown, but they've toned them way back from a color standpoint. Their objective here is they're trying to create, because the slope goes up as you move to the north, they wanted to create a view corridor over these homes from the homes in the back. So that was their justification for using the flat roofs, which you can appreciate that kind of concept. And they did show us this is a snapshot of it, but one of the things we wanted to make sure is the colors were not this. And they were more consistent with what's in the architectural guidelines. So I'll show you a couple other photographs. So here's, you can see the colors are softer. They did several things, particularly here. You can see the wood soffits here, trying to create that consistent mill theme where there's wood elements in it, which is consistent with the rest of the neighborhood. We've pushed that. They've made distinctive doorways. Before, the doorways kind of all looked the same. That was another change. Or that's another element of the architectural standards, is making sure that the homes feel distinctive and it's not just the same home one after the other. This is the view from Lumber Lane. And remember, these are the homes that look over the flat-roofed homes. And before, all the homes kind of had the same style of roof. We asked them to change the roof lines, put in some gabled roofs. You can see there's some single pitch roofs. They still have some flat roofs. But the point was is that they were changing the architecture so it didn't seem so rote through there. They put splashes of color in there. And one of the components we hear from not just the Butler team but other teams is that this is the architecture that people are buying. I don't know how we argue with that because we have seen other architecture that it's not like this and by developers. But this seemed to be what, that's a component that they say is very important, is this more contemporary architecture. This is another view from the south, kind of zoomed in a little bit. And you can see how the patterns change in the homes here, and the ones in the back are looking over it. And you can see gabled roofs and whatnot. So that was the kind of the summary that Tony wanted me to run through. I'm glad to answer questions that I can answer, if you have any.
So I just want to kind of iterate the fact that in the committee, we were, we're not all design people, so I kind of leave it up to the experts on that regard, because the flat roof, the very modern texture, was kind of a surprise to us, I think. So I would love to get everybody's input on that. But nonetheless, what was appealing is the fact that you can have the houses behind look over those houses. So that was appealing. So with that said, maybe everybody could kind of put in their input there.
Mr. Chairman, if they wanted to get rid of the flat roofs on the secondary homes, they still have a flat roof on the secondary, so it's not necessary for view or any reason. The front ones I can understand, so they have views on their secondary homes, but why a flat roof on the secondaries?
I'll repeat what they told us, Commissioner Chapkus, is that before many of these, I think all of them were flat roofed, and we asked them to change the roof lines. They did go in and you can see change a number of them, but they're trying to break up the pattern, so they just stick a flat one in there in order to break up the pattern. One of the things that they're attempting to do, which you can understand why they're doing this, is to keep the floor plans the same. So they can repeat the floor plans in the home, so you have the economies of that, and just change one or two elements of it, which before, the elements that were changed were very few, but through several meetings, they were responsive to the requests from the ADRC group to change elements to create that distinctiveness. Remember, these are duplexes here, or townhomes, however you want to look at them, so there's a common wall right there.
Okay. Thank you.
I just say, I guess, it's interesting how trends come and go, and I've had people in the public voice complaints to me about the looks of some of these houses down in the Atlas project, but, I mean, the Atlas project isn't any different than most of the subdivision developments I see. There's a lot of this going on. I mean, a dozen years ago, Craftsman was the big thing. Now it's this contemporary look with, flat roofs and sloped shed roofs, and you see it on the lake too, in the big lake places they're going in and so forth. It reminds me a lot of the 1950s and 60s trendy homes you'd see in Sunset Magazine.
Agree.
Yeah, I think Brennan
Medallion.
mentioned Frank Lloyd Wright, kind of ish.
That's what I was thinking,
But, yeah, the public seems to be buying it, so I guess, that's what the developer wants. That's what they seem to be doing everywhere.
Did they make enough accommodation, do you feel?
Yes, that was so just to recap the process, the ADRC group, which Tony mentioned earlier, is myself and Hillary and Del Hatch. We went through several iterations, kind of got it to the point that we thought it was comfortable to recommend it to the RFP selection committee. So Christy Wood, Olivia, Brennan, and Troy Timus and Hillary. Those were the people that originally looked at the proposals. And so we took it to them first before coming to the board to say, and had a meeting where we could discuss it in detail, laid out the path we went through with the Butler team, before it came to this body for consideration.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, even though it's not my style, there's good repetition and fenestration, and they've mixed it up and made it look pretty good.
Landscaping, and I
tones.
understand the logic too of the flat roof in front to allow a view in the back, from the back, so.
Yeah,
They are softer colors too, so.
Good job, RFP committee. You need an emotion.
Yes, sir.
We're looking for a motion to approve amendment number 2 for Area 5B.
Make the motion to accept Riverfest LLC Areas 5B and 8 DDA Amendment Number 2
B and 8.
regarding Area 5B architecture.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Chairman, just to let you know, Commissioner Mandel reached out and they can hear us and they can hear each other. We just can't hear them. So
Okay.
they at least are hearing what's happening in the meeting.
Thank you.
Were there any naysayers?
I'm not going to ask them to vote by text.
Is that a proxy vote, or how does that work?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next item on my report is RFP number 8, areas 9, 16, 17, 18, and 19, with a revised recommendation coming from the Atlas Project RFP Review Committee. So just to recap, as you remember, the board originally awarded areas 9, 16, 17, 18, 19 that you can see on the screen there to the Toll Brothers Development Group last month based on their proposal. And very shortly after that award, we were notified by Toll Brothers that they were withdrawing their proposal and they would not look to further endeavor on that proposal for those areas. So the committee kind of regrouped, and we had a very qualified second positioned proposal from the SMOC development team. We kind of looked at that proposal, and we reached out and we chatted with the SMOC development team on potential, updates to their proposal, any potential revisions, any ideas on updated phasing ideas. And we had a very constructive meeting with them, and they provided some additional information that the committee felt was very well received, and brings forward a recommendation that that we have already accepted the Toll Brothers withdrawal, and that we award the RFP number 8, areas 9, 16, 17, 18, and 19 to the SMOC development team. And Phil will kind of share a little summary of what the committee went through.
Okay, thanks, Tony. And Pepper and Duffy Smock are here if you guys happen to have questions directly for them that I can't answer or Tony can't answer. As Tony said, that's the RFP 8 area. I did want to refresh the board's memory of the distinction between the two. This is the SMOC proposal. There's 18 single-family homes down here. This is the area that looks out over below, so these are kind of the nicer, nice view lots here. The SMOC's proposed 20 townhomes in this area. In contrast, the Toll Brothers had 16 homes on the waterfront side of Topsaw Lane, but they proposed 40 townhomes in this area, higher density, which was one of the appeals that we had looked at before, envisioning that it would bring a lower price point. Interestingly, the price point of the SMOC product here is proposed to be lower than what the Toll Brothers price point was, but there was more of the Toll Brothers, which was a appealing element because of the density. The board has seen this before in one of the memos I first wrote to you, and there's 3 columns here: the original SMOC proposal, this is the revised SMOC proposal, and then this is the Toll Brothers one that I put in there just so you guys could see the difference between the two. I will point out to the board, in the memos, there was a math error. And so if you look at these, the totals are a little different. It doesn't change the delta much between, like, for comparison purposes. But if you're looking at your memo and looking at this, there's I wanted to point that out to you. The areas to kind of focus on are here. So the timeline to complete, Toll Brothers originally had proposed 9 years. Smocks were at 10 years on this phase. What we understood in our discussions with them, that's now been modified to 4 years. So if you just think when the build happens and you pull that back, the increment starts sooner, which is an important component. Same thing down on areas 18 and 19. You can see that the timeframe is down here to 6 years. And so when you look at the offer prices, they're here. You look at the increment number, which is here. So the estimated tax increment, originally it was 1.5. In this case, it goes up to 2 million. So we have this spreadsheet that we build that puts in all the estimated price point of their product, calculates the increment over the life of the district, which is how we arrive at these numbers for you guys to have kind of something to focus in on. So this is 9, 16, and 17, and 18 and 19. And so you can see the delta between the original proposal from SMOC and the current proposal. It increased by $1 million. So just to boil it down into kind of a simple numerical one from a monetary standpoint is this proposal is $450,000 less than what you were going to get from the Toll Brothers proposal. So from that metric, you know, you might almost say I don't want to say that 450,000 is an insignificant number, but it's pretty darn close. So from that standpoint, I think it's close. The other consideration for the board is the density question, and whether we were so enamored with a higher density here that would trump not accepting this proposal and re-RFPing this, because that would be your other consideration, right, is to accept this proposal or to re-RFP this site. So then the last thing I will toss out here, you'll see in here is some costs associated with infrastructure improvements, because we did not plan to have 20 water and sewer services here because we were so focused on getting this density. So there will be additional infrastructure costs. On the SMOC proposal, there's also approaches we have to build here and here for this alley that would service here. We don't believe, and this is my recommendation to you, that the cost to construct this alley, which the SMOCs have asked you to pay for, it's about $55,000, should be part of your deal with them. And the primary reason is we will probably be gone from the site. So our contractor will be gone, we'll be demobilized, we won't be there anymore. It's on private property as opposed to being in the public realm, where we're currently spending a lot of your money is in the public realm. So you'll see in this comparison that originally they were asking for $400,000 of Ignite improvements, and here we're asking for $340,000, which is that $60,000 to build that alleyway in there. It helps this number down here as well. And so these are negotiating points that I'm kind of, if you approve this, that we would work through in the DDA process with them. So I've summarized that for you, and potential terms and conditions would be they'll agree to the following build schedule, which the SMOCs have seen this, and then you would fund up to $340,000 of additional public right-of-way infrastructure. So I know that was a lot of information, so I'm glad to answer questions.
Sorry, I didn't mean to miss this. When you reviewed this in the committee meeting, the delta, does that include the increment? Because I noticed that the increment is, or is that just the actual offer price delta?
It's the increment, it's the offer and the increment.
Okay.
Yes. That's why the build schedule is that's why this is so important. Is the way that it shakes out. And essentially what the SMOCs have told us is that they're going to build 10 units a year. And so 2023, they'll only get 5 in, right? Because that's in areas 14 and 15, which are currently underway. They have to do architecture and whatnot for these other areas. So they would build 10 in the following years. It kind of shakes out. When you're building twin homes, you'd only build 9, and then you would build 10.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, it seems like, again, the path of least resistance versus going out with a new RFP. Our executive director, do you feel that this is the best outcome?
I think this is a very good outcome, given many parameters of the project. I think we have a very solid development team that we know here in the community. I don't think we're going to have any issues like we've had with folks from away, so to speak. So
Agree.
I'm very comfortable with
Okay.
this proposal.
Thank you. I agree.
They agreed to some very favorable terms from 10 years to 4 years,
I think so.
so.
Just some comment. I like the quicker timeline. Not just getting the increment on board, but, it seems like we've been at this for a while and the community, so that will be nice, and it's kind of visible up there. And in terms of my 2 cents or take on maybe the trade-off of, more units, that higher density, versus what we're getting here. And to my mind, this is a nice balance of, density. In my mind, you don't want density at all costs. And this is going to be for the people living there and everything. That will be a nice, I think that end product would be nice. So in my mind, I think that's a reasonable kind of middle path weaving through there. I am curious, and maybe if this is something that, by our design standards, right above Area 17, and maybe on the colored map, is the kind of like the little leftover. It seems like in different places we've shoehorned every possible thing we can. Is that one we deliberately left for a little green space, or?
That one, Commissioner English, is got quite a bit of slope to it.
Okay, yeah, now I'm
So
picturing.
it's challenged,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay,
it's
and that's
challenged.
nice, yeah.
Yeah,
That's, okay.
and I appreciate your comment, and I actually forgot to mention this. When we sat down with the Smocks, we asked them, would they consider going to this density? And we worked through it and talked about it, and they said, that's not really what we're interested in, but we'll certainly consider it. And so they went away and came back, and Duffy Smock and I talked, and he said they're very focused on making this a nice neighborhood.
Yep.
Not that density doesn't create nice neighborhoods, but they're worried about parking and just what the higher density on this side of the street might cause, the impacts it might create on the south side of the street. So they were very keen on keeping nice townhomes on this side. You've seen the products that they have here on Sherman, and then these homes on the south side. So understand they had good points, and I think you're repeating that same
It's a good
thought.
balance to me, but.
Yeah, I just want to say I appreciate that information, Phil. That was exactly my question, is what conversations happened around the density change.
Yeah.
So it makes complete sense, so I appreciate that.
Further comments? Somebody want to make a motion?
I think it looks good.
I'll make a motion to approve RFP number 8. We already approved the withdrawal from Toll Brothers, but to award the SMOC team.
Second.
Did I
Moved and
miss anything?
seconded. Any further discussion or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The final element is this an Atlas project update from Mr. Phil Boyd.
Okay, thanks, Tony. So I'll just give you kind of a quick run through here. The underground infrastructure is stopped pending this RFP 8 board decision. You guys have heard me say this before, that La Riviere has been pretty flexible with us. When we looked like we might head down the path with a SMOC team, we had to stop because we're not currently planned to put in 20 services on the north side. So from here, now that the board has said this, we'll go back, start scoping out the level of both engineering and construction effort, bring back a budgeted proposal, which will be within that number I showed you earlier here. So that's what we're happening there. So you might wonder why is the weather turning nice and there's work not happening? This is why. But I think it's for a good cause. The Phase 2A landscaping is underway, so remember that's down on the south side of the project, off the bluff, and then the rockery wall is complete. This is actually a photo looking at the Toll Brothers product, so you can see they've got their townhomes underway here. This is at the top of the rockery wall that's being backfilled, so this is also the smock area down here, 14 and 15. Another picture of the scraper happening there. This is looking back towards the DeChase product on Area 10. So these are those multifamily units here. On the left-hand side here, you can see the Butler products under construction there. This is on the south side. This is the duplexes or twin homes that they have not started up here. There's a picture of the rockery wall. Thank goodness that's done. If you go out there and you see that there's a gap in the rockery wall, that's because that's the hill climb. The board might remember when we originally did the PUD, the pedestrian circulation is an important component. So if you're coming along the Celtice path, you can turn right here and walk down through the subdivision and get right down to the water. So there's three routes. There's the one on the west side that is a shared use path, so you can ride down in bikes and a protected corridor, so you're not going to cross any approaches and get run over. This is a pedestrian corridor, and then there's one more through Phase 3, which we obviously haven't worked through Phase 3 yet, but you'll see that in the future. And that's all I have, Chairman Hoskins. If there's questions.
Wall looks good.
I have one question for you, Phil. So will it really hold you up if you have to wait one more month for that infrastructure to go in? Can we do it
That's an
sooner?
excellent question. And so, and Tony and I had that discussion, and I said, you want me to bring forward the engineering agreement amendments and the construction agreements to this meeting? So we would just go bang, 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 and we would roll into the work. Because we have to submit it all to the city for approval, and that'll probably take 2 or 3 weeks to get approved through the city. So there's a little bit of delay in there, and Tony thought it would be prudent to have the board vet this first before we brought the amendments forward. The potential impact was from the contractor with his delay, his carry costs. And so I talked with Tommy LaRiviere about it, and I said, does it matter if you start in June or July? Because that's the distinction. If you were to approve us tonight, we would start in June. If you approve us in May, we'll start in July.
Would it hold up any of the developers?
No, I don't think it will hold up anybody else, because now smocks have that entire upper area. The only other area is Phase 3, which we've got quite a discussion to have on Phase 3. Is it going to be a higher density product, or is it going to be a lower density product? Where's the board headed on that? That's going to take a little bit of time. We'll introduce that topic again in May. You guys have seen the original, or the initial concept, but just again, as a refresher, the board said, let's see how RFP 8 shakes out. Show us the numbers, comprehensively through RFP 8, where are we at? And then we'll talk about Phase 3. So next board meeting, we'll have a couple topics to work through.
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
More questions for Mr. Boyd?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Tony. Next up is board commissioner comments. Any comments from board members?
I want to thank Commissioner Widmeyer for all of his service. I believe it's his
Well,
last
yes,
meeting.
Steve was going to have a board comment tonight. Can we hear Steve yet? So I'm going to speak for Steve a little bit, because I talked with him on the phone yesterday and asked him if his term is up in May, and he's not going to continue on here. He's going to get off the board and actually go back to work, I think. But so this is his last board meeting, and I know he had some fine words of wisdom and stuff to share with all of us. So, but I think what we'll do is we're going to try to set up a lunch sometime and take him to lunch here sometime this summer, I think.
That'd be nice.
But we're going to miss him. thank him very much for all of his service and stuff. He, with his different hats that he brought, being a mayor and then being a developer, both of those were very, they were very, oh gosh, I can't think of the word I want, but
Insightful?
it was very, yeah, very helpful. That's not the word I wanted, but yeah, it was very helpful for this committee and shed a new eye and a light on things. So thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Any other comments? That, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 We're adjourned, and that's a wrap, Jeff.
Thank you.